Hey, welcome back to Griffzilla Garage. I'm sure you guys have heard people say they're a Christian before, that they are saved. Well, what does that mean? Now, I know there's some of you guys saying, well, was Jesus really the Son of God? It was just written by smart guys. Listen, we'll get to all that. Just humor me. Bear with me for a second here, all right? So why do we have religion? Well, let's start with it's man's attempt to reconcile with God. Okay, that's great, Griff. Why does man want to reconcile with God? Well, because nobody wants to go to hell. That's the cold, hard truth. Well, so what do? Well, it really is as simple as if you believe Jesus Christ was the Son of God and died for you and rose again, you go to heaven. Romans 10:9. If you declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. Matthew 10:32. Everyone therefore who acknowledges me before others, I also will acknowledge before my Father in heaven. Luke 12:8. I tell you, whoever publicly acknowledges me before others, the Son of Man will also acknowledge before the angels of God. So it really is that simple. If you believe Jesus Christ was the Son of God and died for you and rose again, you're saved. It's that easy. Some of you would think, well, what if someone has done all these terrible things? I'm sure a lot of you have heard the story of the thieves on the cross, both being crucified. One of the thieves say, remember me when you come into your kingdom. I mean, and it's recorded in all four Gospels that both thieves mocked him. These guys are dying, and they have a hard heart. They're like, no, I will not go quietly. I'm angry at God. But something happened, and God changed one of their hearts. And he believed that Jesus was the Son of God. And he was saved. Right up to the last minute. You don't want to wait till the last minute. Because what if you don't get that chance? Okay. So you say, that's real nice, Griff. These people believed in Jesus. But was Jesus real? Was he really the Son of God? Well, let's check this out. The Bible's 66 books written by 40 different authors over 1,500 years. Yet it's one consistent message. They didn't all know each other.
Pretend you and six guys at work.
They're all going to write a story. You think it's all going to line up? I mean, you get accomplices in a crime, they can't get their stories to line up. You're showing 66 books by 40 authors over 1,500 years? Check this out, guys. There's 300 and some prophecies about Jesus in the Old Testament.
Chances of Christ being born in Bethlehem.
1 in 280,000. Presenting himself as king on a donkey. It happened to be the exact day that it was prophesied, but also that was 1 in a million. Betrayed for 30 pieces of silver. 1 in 100,000. Jesus crucified. 1 in 10,000. Here's the kicker with that. It was prophesied that he was going to be crucified like 700 years before crucifixion was even invented. They hadn't even invented that form of death yet. So you have all these prophecies that Jesus fulfilled. Let's say you believe me. You're like, okay, yeah, he happened to be this 1 in 10 billion chance that this guy Jesus shows up and does all this. Did Jesus really rise from the dead? Well, let's look at not just what the Bible says, and then we'll look at something else. First, Matthew 28, it talks about how the Roman soldiers were bribed into saying, oh yeah, his friends took his body. So that's recorded. You think, well, okay, big deal, Griff. All right. Well, in 1 Corinthians 15, years later, Paul's writing a letter to the church of Corinth. And he says, hey, guys, remember when Jesus appeared to over 500 people? Most of them are still alive. And you got to remember, the New Testament, it's written by eyewitnesses during the lifetime of other eyewitnesses. If someone in 1963 said that JFK was killed by a bow and arrow, it wouldn't fly. No one would believe that. In the first century, no one disputed if Jesus was real, if he was crucified or if he rose from the dead. It was common knowledge. This guy changed the world. That's why we still talk about him today. That's why you have his disciples that were in hiding. They were in hiding. They were not stealing a body. They were in hiding until Jesus appeared to them. And what happens when he appears to them? They're not in hiding anymore. They're out there telling everybody because they were so relieved. Think about it, guys. They were waiting for the Christ. He shows up. He does a ministry for 3 years. Jesus was a rock star, guys. You think Taylor Swift is big? Jesus was raising people from the dead, curing uncurable diseases. He was everywhere. These people gave up their livelihood to follow him. And then when he was crucified, they were devastated. It was like all the wind about taken out of their sails. They thought, what do we do now? We gave our whole life for this the past 3 years, and now he's gone? They were bummed out. And then he rose from the dead, took the keys to the grave, and said, I've got these now. Continue following me. You may die a physical death, but you won't die the second death, the spiritual death, eternal separation from God. Not when you're following Jesus. Remember, Peter denied even knowing Jesus, denied even knowing him, to then willingly being crucified upside down. Not only that, it's recorded in the Bible that Jesus tells him, look, you're going to die if you continue to follow me. He knew that. He didn't stop. He went from denying Jesus to being so convinced that he spent the rest of his life knowing he was going to die for talking about Jesus. That's pretty badass. That is cool. That's the kind of hope these followers of Jesus had when he was resurrected. They knew it was real. You don't see people wanting to be Branch Davidians or Heaven's Gate followers anymore. But you see people following Jesus everywhere. Let's just do a quick recap. Jesus is the Son of God. He died for you and rose again. And for you to be saved and go to heaven, all you have to do is believe that, and you will be saved. You don't have to speak in another language. You don't have to be baptized. You don't have to do anything else. Christ did everything. All you have to do is believe it and accept it. And when you do, you decide to follow Christ, Christ will make the changes in you. You'll be surprised. It's pretty cool. So let's get to why and when we celebrate Easter or Resurrection Sunday. And let's stick to the facts. The facts are Christ was crucified on the 14th of Nisan. I'm no mathematician, but when he rose 3 days later, that'd be the 17th of Nisan. All right, great. Where are you going with this, Griff? Here's where I'm going with it. Polycarp was a disciple of John, the disciple that Jesus loved. And he stuck to doing things in accordance with the 14th. And so they were called quattrodeciman, which means 14ism or 14ers. Unfortunately, the early church was super anti-Semitic. So in the early church, you had two groups of people that were celebrating Easter or Resurrection Day on different days. You had the quattrodeciman that wanted to stick with the historical text and facts that Jesus was crucified on the 14th of Nisan, which is their start of Passover and Day of Preparation, and rose on the 17th. Now remember, the 14th of Nisan, it could be any day of the week. The early Church of Rome, and then later finalized by the Council of Nicaea and Constantine, said, we want nothing to do with the Jews, and we can't have this fall on any day that coincides with a Jewish feast day. And they wanted to make sure it was on a Sunday. It had to be on a Sunday for them. That's how they felt it should be. That's what they wanted it to be, and they didn't want it to coincide with any Jewish feast days. So in their zeal to do that, they decided to make it the first Sunday after the first full moon of the vernal equinox in spring, intentionally making sure it did not land on a Jewish feast day. And when you do things the way that you feel instead of what the text says, that leads to all kinds of misconceptions and traditions that aren't correct. That's how you get four-door Mustangs. You know, if we had stuck to the text, Resurrection Day this year would be April 25th and would not have fallen on Transgender Day. It's important to stick with the facts. You know what's pretty wild is that we have this eclipse coming up, and I'm sure you've seen other things on YouTube about all these prophecies, and I'm not going to get into all that. But we do know it's a pretty rare occurrence. What's pretty neat is that, you know, Passover starts on the 14th of Nisan, which happens to be the 22nd of April, which happens to be exactly 14 days after the eclipse. So I don't know if that means anything, but coincidence is not a kosher word. if you're listening to this right now, there's a reason for it. What does God want to do with you? And will you let him?